Hi, my name is Dana Huber, and this is my final project for 381. So I interviewed Ray. He's a security guard at the high school just down the street from where I live at Temecula Valley High School. He's worked at quite a few schools in the district because he started off as a substitute, but now he's a permanent staff member at Temecula Valley. He's also a first sergeant in the United States Army, and he's commanded a lot of soldiers in his 20 years in, so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to ask him about, if he's seen some similarities or differences or how he kind of crosses over his two roles and, just see what he says. The site that I chose is Temecula Valley High School. That is where Ray works as a security guard. Temecula is a very affluent area as opposed to some of these other neighborhoods in California. In 2017, our median income was $89,000 and the poverty rate was 6.3%. In comparison, Inglewood, just up the road in Los Angeles, their median income was $51,000 and they had a poverty rate of 16.5%, which is significantly higher than Temecula. So Ray said that there's not a lot of violence that goes on in the high school other than, of course, the occasional fight. And those fights are more just students trying to display physical dominance and nothing like with, bad intentions. Like he said, no, they don't have the intention to kill. Like I know some of these fights in gang neighborhoods have. And because he's worked in some other schools in the district, he said there isn't any difference based on where he's worked and what he's heard from colleagues. It's kind of the same across the district. I asked him what his duties are as a security guard. He said that his main duty is the safety and protection of the 3 S's, which are students, staff, and school. So with that, he monitors the safety of the buildings on campus and reports suspicious activity of visitors and students. He also lets anyone know that they're breaking the rules, like smoking, loitering, or being in unauthorized areas. He also escorts visitors, students, staff, and faculty between areas to keep them safe, and he also will supply students and staff with services like lockouts of their cars, battery jumps, and also giving people directions on where to go, kind of like the campus places Cal State San Marcos does. So I asked Ray how disruptive students are handled just because I never was a problem kid in high school, so I never actually went to security. So I asked him how, they did at his school. So he told me that, when a teacher calls like, hey, I need you to take this kid out of my class, he's being disruptive, they'll escort him to the security office and have the principal or the vice principal handle the discipline and decide what needs to be done. So that's how disruptive students are handled like at the school level, but on a personal level, he tries to build these relationships with these kids, talk to them, understand why they're being disruptive, and he tries to just let them know, like, hey, like, this is how the real world works. The way you're acting now is not going to fit in. You're going to have a really hard time. You need to learn how to follow the rules, listen to your teachers, finish school because it is so important for the rest of your life and being a part of, like, the real working world. You need to be able to, not act the way you are. So I asked Ray how he believes his training in the Army as a soldier helps him work in the school, and this is a direct quote from him. Basically, one of the biggest takeaways is that he's been taught that everybody has a different approach to understanding things or solving issues, and because everybody has a different learning style, so he does apply that in his work with the students and, approaching students differently, the ones that have, caused problems a lot. He tries to understand why they're doing it and, takes different approaches based on every student to inform them like, hey, you can't be doing that. Here's why. He also told me that a lot of kids approach him and ask him about the military and joining and, if they should do it, which he does tell them like, hey, like, yeah, it's a great opportunity. You get school paid for, you get job security, job training. There's a lot of benefits to it, but you have to be able to follow orders. That's the biggest thing in the military is following orders. You don't really get a choice. So, the kids that do cause problems and have a hard time like listening in school, he's like, maybe you shouldn't just because you gotta follow orders. And if you want to do that, you gotta fall in line real fast. I asked Ray about his role as a sergeant and what he asks his soldiers about in their lives, and he mentioned that he asks about their present life and what they're dealing with at home to see, how we can help them and maybe understand why they're acting a certain way if they're not, following orders and having trouble falling into the military lifestyle. But he never asks about their upbringing unless he knows that they're comfortable talking about it, just because he doesn't want to invade their privacy. And I know he does this at school too, works with the students to kind of understand what they're dealing with at home. Maybe, maybe their parents are going through a divorce, or maybe, their dad just left them and they're dealing with, the fallout of that. course, he doesn't invade privacy, but he does go out of his way to understand why a kid is acting the way he does, to maybe help them, direct them to some resources, maybe inform their teachers like, hey, this guy's going through a lot, here's why he's acting the way he does. And I think that this is really important for anyone working with kids to understand what's going on in their kids' homes, because you never know. Someone who looks okay might be dealing with a family death or something really tragic at home, and they're just acting out because they don't know how to process. And it is really important to make sure that we're helping these kids process these things and give them the best treatment that they can to help them succeed. So on that note of disruptive students, this was a study done back in 2010 that asked teachers to participate in an online survey that basically just asked some questions about how their students behave in the classroom and, what they knew about their home life, whether they were abused or not. And the conclusion of that study was that teachers reported that maltreatment outcomes manifest in academic difficulties, attention deficiency, disruptive and internalizing behaviors, and other maltreatment related, I don't know how to say that word. So what also came from the study was that because the behaviors of abused kids are also really similar to kids with like attention deficit disorders, there does need to be some training that goes on to help teachers kind of determine the difference and best work with their students to help them be as successful as possible. This information comes from a textbook from 2018 for pediatric nurse practitioners that kind of helps to educate the studying nurse practitioners on adolescents and their behaviors that they can engage in. And this study basically says that there's a lot of risk factors in an adolescent's life that determine whether they'll engage in those risk behaviors later in life. And some of these risk behaviors include abuse from their role models or even illiteracy in their role models, and protective behaviors such as academic success, parental support, and engagement in their community can help protect these adolescents from engaging in these behaviors later in life. This study was a little different in that it asked teenagers to rate their own health problems and likelihood to engage in risk-taking behaviors like drugs, alcohol, and crime. The conclusion in this study is that there is a strong relationship between abuse and maltreatment by parents and health problems and engagement in risky behavior in teenagers. So in the end, the study calls for better screening methods and interventions and treatments wherever professionals work with youth in order to help mitigate these behaviors. So like I've said, Temecula is a really nice area. The area that the high school is located is actually one of the most, lowest income areas of Temecula, and even then it's still really safe. I get off work really late, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I've never felt unsafe coming home. But that being said, we never know that people are being abused at home because it is oftentimes hidden. So the best thing that we can do is just talk to the kids we work with, understand what they're going through at home, know what to look for, spot the signs that they are being abused, maybe offhand comments or random bruises on their bodies, or just, any other signs that we can see, and direct them to the resources the best we can, or call CPS or whatever the case is. Above all, we just need to treat people like humans and not treat, kids at schools that cause problems like, criminals. We need to treat them like humans because, again, we don't know what they're going through. So abuse in homes has so many consequences, and if we can't stop it when we see it, we are really doing a disservice to those kids. So, we need to do the best that we can. That being said, thank you so much for listening. Have a great break and happy holidays.